happens in the stillness. The world has gone quiet, your room is dark, and everyone else seems to be sleeping peacefully. But you're awake, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows move across the walls while your mind races through every conversation you had today, every decision you made last week, every moment from years ago that you thought you'd forgotten. This isn't just insomnia. This isn't random restlessness. This is your mind doing something it believes is productive, something it thinks will finally bring you peace. But here's what most people don't understand about those 2LM thoughts. They're not punishment. They're not a sign that you're broken or that something is fundamentally wrong with you. Your brain is trying to solve something, searching for closure in the silence, attempting to finish conversations that never had endings. The psychology of late-night overthinking runs deeper than most realize. It's not about the thoughts themselves. It's about what your mind is trying to resolve in the only quiet moment it has all day. Let me show you what's really happening when you can't sleep. Let me show you why your brain waits until everyone else is gone to finally speak. Let me show you the truth about those 2LM thoughts that keep you company in the dark. Because once you understand what your mind is seeking, the overthinking stops feeling like chaos. It starts feeling like a message, and maybe, just maybe, you'll finally learn how to answer it. The room is silent except for the hum of distant traffic. Your body is exhausted, begging for rest, but your mind has other plans. It begins replaying that conversation from earlier, the one where you said something that felt slightly off, slightly too honest, slightly too revealing. You replay it once, then twice, then a dozen times, each iteration becoming more distorted, more painful, more catastrophic in your imagination. This is the beginning of the spiral. But here's what's fascinating from a psychological perspective. Your brain isn't torturing you for no reason. It's engaging in something called rumination, a cognitive process where the mind repeatedly focuses on problems, distressing situations, or perceived failures in an attempt to find resolution. Rumination isn't inherently bad. In healthy doses, it's how we process emotions, learn from experiences, and develop self-awareness. But at 2 a.m., when your defenses are down and your prefrontal cortex is tired, rumination transforms into something more sinister. Because at night, your brain doesn't have the distractions of the day. There's no work to focus on, no conversations to have, no stimulation to pull your attention away. So every unresolved feeling, every unanswered question, every moment of uncertainty rises to the surface like debris floating up from the ocean floor, and your mind, desperate for closure, tries to solve it all at once. It tries to find patterns in randomness. It tries to create certainty and ambiguity. It tries to control the uncontrollable by thinking about it endlessly. But here's the cruel paradox. The more you think, the further you get from resolution. Because rumination at 2 a.m. isn't problem solving, it's problem rehearsing, replaying the same scenes without ever finding new answers. Psychologists call this cognitive perseveration, the inability to stop thinking about something, even when it's no longer productive. Your brain gets stuck in a loop, convinced that if it just thinks a little harder, a little longer, it will finally understand what went wrong, what you should have said, what you should have done differently. But understanding doesn't come from repetition. It comes from perspective. And perspective is the one thing you can't access at 2 a.m. when your mind is tired, your body is restless, and your emotions are amplified by darkness and silence. So you lie there, thinking in circles, analysing conversations that have already ended, worrying about futures that haven't arrived, reliving moments that can never be changed. And the longer you think, the more real it all becomes. The scenarios grow more vivid. The catastrophes feel more inevitable. The mistakes seem more unforgivable. This is what happens when the mind tries to resolve the unresolvable. It creates problems out of silence. It turns questions into emergencies. It transforms uncertainty into unbearable weight. But here's what you need to know. Those thoughts aren't the truth. They're the exhaustion speaking. They're the loneliness of night amplifying every fear you successfully ignored during the day. Because during daylight your mind has guardrails. It has logic, distraction, and the gentle pressure of social norms that keep catastrophic thinking at bay. But at 2 a.m. those guardrails disappear, and suddenly every small worry becomes a crisis. Every unanswered text becomes rejection. Every mistake becomes evidence of your unworthiness. This is the psychology of late-night overthinking. Not weakness, not madness, just a tired mind trying to find peace in the only way it knows how, by thinking its way through the darkness. But what if I told you that the solution isn't more thinking? What if the answer your mind is searching for can't be found in thought at all? You've been lying there for an hour now, maybe 2. Time feels strange at night, elastic and heavy. Minutes stretching into what feels like hours, while hours collapse into moments of panic. Your mind has moved from one topic to another, a chaotic tour through every source of anxiety in your life. Work stress, relationship doubts, things you said years ago that suddenly feel unforgivable, things you didn't say that now seem crucial, and beneath all of it, there's a question your mind keeps circling back to. Am I enough? Did I do the right thing? Will everything be okay? These aren't new questions. They've been with you for a long time, maybe your whole life. But during the day, you can avoid them. You can distract yourself with productivity, with other people's needs, with the relentless momentum of daily life. But at 2 a.m. there's nowhere to hide. The questions find you. And your mind, in its desperate attempt to answer them, begins to search through your entire history for evidence. This is where the psychology gets particularly painful. Because your brain at night is not an objective observer, it's biased, selective, and cruel in its interpretation of your past. When you're anxious and tired, your mind engages in something called negativity bias. It preferentially recalls negative experiences, failures, and rejections, while filtering out successes, kindnesses, and moments of connection. This isn't intentional. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism gone haywire. Your ancestors needed to remember threats more vividly than pleasures, because forgetting a danger could mean death. But in the modern world, this bias doesn't keep you safe. It just keeps you awake, replaying every moment where you felt small, rejected, or misunderstood. So at 2 a.m., your mind builds a case against you. It gathers every mistake, every awkward moment, every time you weren't perfect, and presents them as evidence of your fundamental unworthiness. But here's the truth your tired brain can't see. Memory isn't reality, it's reconstruction. Every time you recall a moment, you're not accessing a perfect recording, you're creating a new version shaped by your current emotional state. So when you're anxious at night, your memories become anxious too. That conversation you're replaying, it probably wasn't as bad as you remember. That rejection you're reliving, it probably wasn't as definitive as it feels now. But your mind doesn't care about accuracy at 2 a.m. It cares about resolution. It wants to understand why you feel this underlying unease, this persistent sense that something isn't right. And so it searches. Through your past, through your relationships, through every decision you've ever made, trying to find the moment where everything went wrong, the original sin that explains why you're lying awake while everyone else sleeps peacefully. This is what psychologists call the illusion of insight. Your mind believes that if it just thinks long enough, it will finally understand. It will finally find the answer that makes everything make sense. But the answer isn't in your past. It's not in that conversation from 3 years ago, or that choice you made last month. The answer is much simpler and much harder to accept. You're overthinking because you're human, because you care, because you're trying to control a world that is fundamentally uncertain, and that uncertainty terrifies you in ways you can only feel when everything else is quiet. Your mind isn't broken. It's just exhausted. It's been carrying questions all day that don't have simple answers, and at night, when it finally has space to process, it mistakes rumination for resolution. But rumination never resolves anything. It just rehearses the pain. It keeps the wound open. It turns healing into a performance you watch from the outside, never quite able to step back into your own life. And the worst part, the more you engage with these thoughts, the stronger they become. Every time you replay that conversation, you're reinforcing the neural pathways that make it easier to replay again. Every time you catastrophize about the future, you're training your brain to see danger where there might be none. This is how overthinking becomes a habit. Not because you choose it, but because your brain learns that thinking feels like doing something. It feels productive. It feels like progress. But it's not progress. It's a treadmill. You're moving, expending energy, exhausting yourself, but you're not getting anywhere. You're just staying in the same painful place, thinking the same painful thoughts, hoping that this time will be different. And the cruelest part of all, the questions you're asking at 2 a.m. often can't be answered with thought. They can only be answered with action, with time, with trust in yourself and the process of living. But action requires daylight, time requires patience, trust requires rest. And all of those are impossible when you're trapped in the darkness of your own mind, thinking in circles, searching for peace in the very thoughts that are stealing it from you. So you lie there, thinking, worrying, analysing, while the night deepens and sleep becomes more and more elusive, and somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispers what you've known all along. This isn't helping. This isn't solving anything. This is just suffering dressed up as productivity. But how do you stop? How do you quiet a mind that believes its survival depends on solving the unsolvable? There's something most people don't realise about the human brain. It wasn't designed for the world we live in now. It was designed for survival in environments where threats were physical, immediate, and concrete. A predator in the bushes, a rival from another tribe, a storm approaching on the horizon. These were problems that could be solved with action, with preparation, with the kind of thinking that leads to tangible solutions. But modern threats aren't like that. They're abstract, they're social, they're existential, they're questions about meaning, worth, and belonging that have no clear answers and no definitive solutions. And yet your brain, this ancient survival machine, still tries to solve them the same way. It scans for danger. It rehearses scenarios. It searches for certainty in a world that offers none. This is why overthinking at 2SES-M feels so urgent. Your nervous system genuinely believes you're in danger. Not physical danger, but psychological danger, which to your brain feels just as real. When you're lying there replaying that conversation, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, is activated. Your heart rate increases slightly. Your muscles tense. Your body prepares for a threat that exists only in your mind. And because there's no physical action you can take to resolve a social embarrassment or a fear of future rejection, your brain does the only thing it can. It thinks. It analyzes. It tries to think its way to safety. But here's the problem. Thinking about social threats doesn't neutralize them the way running from a predator does. It amplifies them. Because every time you replay the embarrassing moment, you re-experience the shame. Every time you imagine the worst-case scenario, you feel the fear as if it's happening right now. This is called emotional reactivation. Your brain can't distinguish between remembering a painful experience and experiencing it in real time. The same neural circuits fire, the same stress hormones release, the same suffering occurs. So when you're overthinking at 2 a.m., you're not just remembering pain, you're recreating it, over and over. With each repetition, you're carving deeper grooves in your neural pathways, making it easier for your mind to fall into the same patterns tomorrow night and the night after that. This is why chronic overthinkers often report feeling exhausted, even when they haven't done anything physically demanding. Their brains have been running a marathon all night, generating and responding to threats that exist only in thought. And the body pays the price. Cortisol levels rise, sleep quality deteriorates, the immune system weakens. Over time, chronic rumination doesn't just steal your peace, it steals your health. But here's what gives me hope. The same neuroplasticity that allows these patterns to form also allows them to change. Your brain can learn new responses. Your nervous system can be retrained. The overthinking doesn't have to be permanent. It starts with understanding what your brain is actually doing. It's not punishing you. It's trying to protect you. It's just using outdated software for modern problems. When you can see overthinking for what it is, a misfiring of your threat detection system, it becomes less personal. Less about your character and more about your neurobiology. Less about being broken and more about being human in a world your brain wasn't designed for. And in that understanding, there's room for compassion. For the part of you that's been trying so hard to keep you safe. For the mind that's been working overtime, convinced that if it just thinks a little more, analyzes a little deeper, it will finally solve the unsolvable and bring you peace. But peace doesn't come from thinking. It comes from the opposite. From the willingness to stop, to rest, to let the mind be still, even when it's screaming that stillness is dangerous. This is the hardest thing to learn. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing at all. That sometimes healing requires surrender, not strategy. That sometimes the only way out is through the very stillness your mind has been running from. The clock shows 3 or sounds AM now. You've been lying here so long that your body has started to ache. Muscles tense from holding yourself in the same position. afraid that moving will make sleep even more impossible than it already feels, and your mind, relentless, continues its work. It's moved beyond specific memories now and has entered the realm of abstract anxiety. The formless dread that something is wrong, that you've forgotten something crucial, that disaster is quietly approaching and you're the only one who doesn't see it coming. This is when overthinking reaches its peak, when it stops being about actual problems and becomes about the feeling of unsafety itself. Your brain is no longer trying to solve specific issues. It's trying to solve the fundamental uncertainty of being alive, and this is where the real psychology reveals itself. Because late-night overthinking isn't really about the thoughts at all. It's about what those thoughts are protecting you from feeling. Beneath the rumination, beneath the analysis, beneath the endless mental rehearsal, there's usually an emotion you're not ready to face. Grief, loneliness, inadequacy, fear, shame. These emotions are uncomfortable, sometimes unbearable, and your mind has learned that thinking about problems is easier than feeling the feelings those problems create. Psychologists call this cognitive avoidance. It's when you use thinking as a defense mechanism against emotional experience. Your mind keeps you busy with thoughts so you don't have to sit with the raw, vulnerable feeling underneath. So you think about what you should have said instead of feeling the shame of what you did say. You think about what might go wrong tomorrow instead of feeling the anxiety of not being in control. You think about why someone might not like you instead of feeling the pain of possible rejection. The thoughts feel productive because they give your mind something to do, but what they're really doing is keeping you at a distance from yourself. They're keeping you in your head instead of in your body where the real healing happens. Because here's what your mind doesn't want you to know. Emotions, no matter how uncomfortable, are not dangerous. They're information. They rise, they peak, they pass. But only if you let them. When you think about emotions instead of feeling them, you trap them. You freeze them in place. You turn a wave that would naturally pass into a wall you keep running into over and over again. And at 2 a.m., when your defenses are weakest, those trapped emotions start pressing against the edges of your awareness. They whisper through the thoughts. They colour the memories. They turn every small worry into something that feels existential. But your mind, trained to avoid feeling, responds by thinking harder. It tries to think its way out of the feeling. It tries to solve the emotion like it's a problem with a logical solution. But emotions aren't problems. They're experiences, and experiences can't be solved. They can only be felt, witnessed, allowed to move through you like weather moving through a landscape. This is why late-night overthinking feels so futile. You're using the wrong tool for the job. You're trying to think your way out of something that can only be felt your way through. And the more you think, the more disconnected you become from the feeling itself, until you're so lost in your mind that you've forgotten what you were even upset about in the first place. But the feeling remains, unprocessed, unwitnessed, waiting. And so it finds other ways to get your attention, through tension in your body, through restlessness, through the relentless thoughts that keep you awake, trying to make sense of a pain you won't let yourself feel. This is the hidden function of overthinking. It's not random, it's not meaningless. It's your mind's way of trying to protect you from overwhelming emotion while simultaneously trying to process that same emotion. It's a paradox, a loop. A mechanism that was supposed to help but has become the problem itself. And the only way out is to stop thinking and start feeling. But how do you do that when feeling is the very thing you've been running from? How do you let yourself be vulnerable when vulnerability has always felt like danger? The answer starts with recognizing what's happening, with naming it, with saying to yourself, even silently, I'm overthinking right now because there's something I don't want to feel. Not as judgment, not as criticism, just as observation, just as truth. And then, with as much gentleness as you can muster, you ask yourself the question your mind has been avoiding. What am I actually feeling right now? Not what am I thinking about, but what sensation is present in my body. Maybe it's tightness in your chest. Maybe it's a knot in your stomach. Maybe it's a heaviness that sits on your shoulders like an invisible weight. Whatever it is, you don't try to change it. You don't try to fix it or understand it or think your way through it. You just acknowledge it. You place your attention there on the raw sensation itself and you breathe. This is harder than it sounds, because the moment you start to feel, your mind will panic. It will pull you back into thinking. It will offer you more scenarios to analyze, more memories to review, more worries to entertain. But you don't follow. You stay with the feeling. You stay with the sensation in your body. You breathe into it. You let it be exactly as it is. And something strange begins to happen. The feeling, once you stop resisting it, starts to shift. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, like ice melting in the sun. Because feelings, when they are allowed to be felt, don't last forever. They have a natural arc. They rise, they crest, they fall, but only when you stop interrupting them with thought. This is what your 2 AM mind doesn't understand, that the peace it's been searching for through analysis and rumination has always been available through the simple act of feeling, of being present, of allowing the emotion to move through you without resistance. It's not about positive thinking. It's not about convincing yourself everything is fine. It's about being willing to be with yourself exactly as you are in this moment, with all the discomfort and uncertainty and fear. And in that willingness, something profound happens. The thoughts lose their power. The anxiety softens. The mind, finally unburdened from its endless task of protecting you from yourself, begins to quiet. Not because you've solved anything, not because you've figured it all out, but because you've stopped trying, because you've finally given yourself permission to simply be human, to feel, to not have all the answers, to be uncertain and scared and imperfect and still, somehow, okay. This is the secret your overthinking mind has been hiding from you, that you don't need to be fixed, you don't need to solve yourself, you just need to be present with yourself. And presence, true presence, is the opposite of overthinking. It's not about doing or analysing or figuring out, it's about being, about resting in the moment exactly as it is, even when the moment is uncomfortable. This doesn't mean the thoughts will stop immediately, they won't. Your mind has been practicing overthinking for years, maybe decades. The neural pathways are deep, the habit is strong. But each time you notice your overthinking and choose to come back to feeling, to breathing, to being present, you're creating a new pathway, a new option, a new way of relating to your own mind. And over time, slowly, gradually, the overthinking loses its grip. The 2 AM sessions become less frequent. The thoughts become less intense. The peace you've been searching for through endless analysis begins to emerge not from figuring everything out, but from learning to be okay with not figuring everything out. Because that's what adulthood really is. Not having all the answers, not solving every problem, not being certain about every choice. It's learning to live with uncertainty, to act despite fear, to be imperfect and try anyway. And your mind, your beautiful, protective, overthinking mind, needs to learn that uncertainty isn't danger, that not knowing isn't failure, that you can be safe even when you don't have everything figured out. This is the work. Not thinking your way to peace, but feeling your way there. Not solving yourself, but accepting yourself. Not waiting until you're perfect to rest, but resting now. Imperfect and human and enough. So here you are, lying in the darkness at 3 AM. Your mind is tired. Your body aches. The thoughts are still there, circling like birds that don't know where to land. But now you have a choice. You can continue engaging with them, believing that just a little more analysis will finally bring resolution. Or you can do something radical. You can let them be. You can acknowledge them without following them. You can feel what's underneath them without judgment. This is the practice, not a technique, not a trick, just a gentle return to yourself. A compassionate acknowledgement of your own humanity, a willingness to be present with whatever arises. And maybe tonight, that's enough. Maybe tonight you don't need to solve everything. Maybe tonight you can just breathe, feel, rest, trust that the morning will come and with it, a little more clarity, a little more perspective, a little more capacity to handle whatever life brings, because you've done this before. You've survived every 2 AM until now. You've made it through every sleepless night, every anxious thought, every moment when your mind convinced you that you weren't okay. And here you are, still breathing, still trying. Still showing up for yourself even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's not nothing. That's resilience. That's courage. That's the quiet strength that lives in every person who's ever lain awake at night, mind racing, wondering if they'll ever feel peace again. You will. Not by thinking your way there, not by solving every problem, but by learning to be with yourself with compassion, by learning to feel without fear, by learning that you are safe even in the uncertainty, even in the not knowing, even in the dark. The overthinking isn't your enemy. It's just a part of you that's trying so hard to keep you safe that it's forgotten how to rest. And maybe tonight, you can thank that part. Thank it for trying. Thank it for caring. And then gently invite it to rest with you. Because you don't need protection from your own life. You don't need to solve every mystery. You don't need to have it all figured out before you're allowed to sleep. You just need to be here, present, breathing, feeling, human. And that has always been enough. So close your eyes, feel the weight of your body against the bed, notice the rise and fall of your breath. Let the thoughts drift by like clouds, neither pushing them away nor holding on to them. And know that whatever you're feeling right now, it's okay. Whatever you're thinking, it's okay. Whatever keeps you awake at 2 a.m., it's okay. You're okay. Not because everything is solved, not because you have all the answers, but because you're here, you're present, you're willing to be with yourself exactly as you are, and in a world that constantly demands you be more, do more, think more, that willingness to simply be is the most radical act of self-love there is. So rest now. Let the mind wander if it must. Let the thoughts come if they will. But underneath it all, underneath the noise and worry and endless analysis, remember this simple truth. You are enough. You have always been enough, and you will be enough tomorrow, no matter how much or how little sleep you get tonight, no matter how many problems you solve or don't solve, no matter what your mind tries to convince you of in the darkness. You are already whole, already worthy, already deserving of peace. Not someday when you finally have it all figured out, but now, right now, exactly as you are. That's the truth your overthinking mind has been trying to protect you from seeing. Because if you truly believed you were already enough, you wouldn't need to spend hours at 2 a.m. trying to prove it. You wouldn't need to solve yourself. You'd just let yourself be. And maybe that's what tonight is really about. Not finding answers, but finding acceptance. Not achieving peace, but discovering that peace has always been here, waiting beneath the noise, available whenever you're ready to stop searching and simply arrive. So arrive now, here, in this moment, in this breath, in this body that's carried you through everything, in this heart that keeps beating even when your mind is at war, in this life that continues unfolding whether you have it all figured out or not. Arrive, rest, breathe, be, and let that be enough. Because it is, it always has been, it always will be. The sun will rise, the thoughts will shift, and you'll move through another day, carrying with you not all the answers, but something better. The knowledge that you can survive the questions, that you can be with yourself in the uncertainty, that you are stronger than your mind's loudest fears, and when night comes again, when 2 a.m. returns and the thoughts start their familiar dance, you'll remember this moment, this choice, this gentle return to yourself. And maybe you'll overthink a little less, feel a little more, and find in the darkness a peace that doesn't require perfection, just presence, just breath, just you, exactly as you are, learning to be enough.